Welcome to another show of Celebrate Life. My name is Gary Carolis, and I'm your host. This show believes that everyone has a story to tell, and every story is worth celebrating. If you're interested in being a guest on the show, please send me an email to celebratelife0747@gmail.com. We're beginning to schedule into 2026. I'm very happy to have as our guest today Kurt Wright. Welcome, Kurt.
Thank you, Gary. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the invite, and it really does show you that everybody's life is worth celebrating, if mine is.
Absolutely. It's true.
But thank you. Seriously, Gary, I thank you for the invitation.
Oh, you're welcome. So tell us about this great life of yours. Where did it start?
Well, I don't know how riveting it is, but, you know, I was born in Middlebury at the Porter Hospital, and I grew up in the little metropolis of Vergennes, about 22 miles from Burlington. It's always been called the smallest city in the USA.
Exactly.
It's a great little city. I still go back to the Vergennes Memorial Day Parade usually, most years, if the weather's okay. And I loved growing up in Vergennes. I've lived in Burlington basically my whole adult life, shortly, I think since about 21, 22. But I loved growing up in Vergennes. I love going back to Vergennes, going to Vergennes High School. It's always a trip down memory lane when I go back. I grew up in after the age of 9 with a family with six kids. I was the youngest, 4 brothers and a sister. And we, after the age of 9, my mother was a single mother.
Okay.
And she raised us from there.
Her hands full.
She did have her hands full, that's for sure. But I did love growing up in Vergennes as a kid. And when I go back there now, I sometimes think, wow, I walk through the neighborhoods different times and I'm like, where are all the kids out there playing and doing the stuff that we used to do back in the day?
Yeah.
I guess it's just a sign of the times, really. The kids are probably more on computers or doing games online or whatever it is.
Unfortunately.
Whereas we were out playing softball in somebody's backyard, playing wiffle ball. We made up a game called Freedom that we would all go and we'd have teams and we would go and we'd be out until basically dark.
Wow.
Then we'd have to go in. But it was a great childhood growing up in Vergennes. There were some tough times, but I mostly remember the good, fun times growing up. And I didn't. There's always regrets. I didn't study hard enough in high school. I developed my love of politics and sports, particularly baseball, while I was probably 12, 13 years old. And I excelled in certain classes, like there was one called American Political Behavior, where my teacher was Barry Aldinger, who's still around. I saw him just a year or two ago down at a Vergennes Union High basketball game.
Fantastic.
And I think I got an A+ in that class, but it just goes to speak to politics, right? And other times I didn't study as hard as I should have. So that's one of my regrets. And I would caution everybody, young kids.
Put your nose to the book.
Yes, do better than I did in that regard.
So where did that political interest spark from?
You know, I was just asked that just recently, and I've even thought to myself, tried to remember, and I can't say for sure. I do remember my older brother coming in during the night, early on in the 1968 presidential campaign saying, looks like it's going to be Kennedy-Nixon again. Kennedy, Nixon, John Kennedy, and Richard Nixon 60, and this time it was thought it was going to be RFK.
Right.
Nixon, of course, before RFK was tragically assassinated.
Right.
And I don't know if that sparked my interest, that comment alone, but I started following the 1968 presidential campaign and got really into it as a young kid, and I just became
it captured your interest.
And I became a lifelong sort of student of my own making of politics.
Yeah. And sports, I know you're a Yankee fan.
I'm a huge Yankee fan. That's
I am too.
One of the other, I didn't know that, Gary. All right. I knew I liked you. That became, I also follow other sports, football and college basketball and things like that. But baseball is my really true passion along with politics, and the Yankees have had a 55-year love affair with the baseball and the Yankees. and I've been to Yankee Stadium many times. So it's sort of what's, not that those are the only things, but those are two passions. Became two lifelong passions of mine.
Did you play ball at all?
You know, I only played a couple of years in Little League, and I played a year of softball when I was an adult, but I was never as good as I wish I was. But what my dream, and you know, some people achieve their dreams and some people don't. One dream that I had that I didn't get, I had others that I would love to have been a baseball broadcaster.
Oh.
That would have been a dream of mine, to be the New York Yankees baseball broadcaster.
Right.
But darn it, John Sterling got the job. So.
Are you old enough to remember Mel Allen and Red Barber and all that?
I know of them. That was a little bit before my time, but I certainly I know Mel Allen, Red Barber, and Phil Rizzuto, who I did broadcast with them when he left the playing career. And I remember Scooter telling the story of how George
Steinbrenner?
No, it wasn't Steinbrenner back then. It was another George, whose name's escaping me right now, who was in charge back then, general manager, called him in and went through the whole list of saying, we need to cut somebody, and he was trying to let Phil, and said, who do you think it should be, Phil? Phil's told this story before, the late, great Phil Rizzuto. And he was trying to lead him to that it was going to be him.
Oh, dear.
And he was trying to have Phil come to that conclusion that it needed to be him, and he had to cut. But then he joined the broadcast booth where he was in the broadcast booth for about 40 years.
He was great.
Yeah, loved the Scooter.
Wow. So back to Vergennes for a second.
Yeah.
It sounds like there was a real sense of community there.
There was. I mean, again, I loved Vergennes. I still love Vergennes, and it's a great little community. And it was a great town to grow up in. We had a group of kids in the neighborhood that I grew up in and in fact, on my radio show, one of the thrills I had the morning drive on WVMT that I just retired from a couple months ago, and I do miss that.
We'll get to that.
Yes, but just in the last weeks of the show, I had on a kid. He's an adult now, obviously, but a kid that grew up across the street from me named Jeff Twiss.
Wow. Who
went on to become a big shot, so to speak, with the Boston Celtics.
Wow.
And in fact, just was put into the Hall of Fame.
Wow.
He was their public relations guy, and he's writing a book actually about his experience. He's dealt with Larry Bird and so it was a thrill for me to have him on the show. He lives in Boston. And he was coming up because his sister still lives in the area, and I hadn't spoken to him since he lived across the street from me, 50 years.
That's amazing.
50 years ago. And it was the first time I'd seen him or spoken to him in 50 years, but someone reconnected us, and he was coming to town, and so it was that was one of my real thrills toward the end of the show.
Wow, that's fantastic. Your next door neighbor.
Next door neighbor who I hadn't seen in a half century, but I had kept track of him and knew that he had gone on to have a big career with the legendary Boston Celtics.
That's phenomenal. Wow. How about now? You've got a lot of brothers and a sister.
I did. My sister passed away. She was 62 years old, a little bit younger than I am now. And my oldest brother passed away. And it's one of the things I used the radio show for, was to caution people and remind people, get your screenings for colonoscopy, for colon cancer, at colonoscopies, which I just had one, because they both failed to have a colonoscopy and they both passed away as a result from colon cancer. So those two are gone, and I have three, and actually another brother just did die, so there's only three of us left.
Wow, okay. And your mother, how was she with this big group of kids? And she was by herself as a single parent. She must have had some tenacity about her.
I mean, bless her heart. I wrote her obituary in the Burlington Free Press when she passed away in 2005, and I wrote in the obituary that her name was Naomi, and I wrote that Naomi had lots of difficulties in her life, but she also had lots of joy with her children and her grandchildren. And I said, to all those that knew Naomi, she was a saint. And she really was. I mean, a lot of times we kids put her through hell. Not
kids being kids,
right?
Yeah.
Not quite as much as a couple of the older ones actually, but she had her hands full, but she was a love it. She devoted her life to her kids and then her grandkids after. That was her whole thing, and to make a living, to be able to support us when she became a single mom.
Yeah.
And I also learned, she took me, I remember her taking me with her to Town Meeting Day in Vergennes.
Really?
Which was a good learning experience. Back then we would go to the fire station in Vergennes and got to see it in action.
Yeah.
Which was people making decisions about a whole variety of things.
Right.
And she always voted. She always made sure she voted. So she was a great mom, and she did under difficult circumstances did the best she could.
Did she talk about politics much in the house?
Not a lot. Some. We talked about politics, but it wasn't something that was a huge passion of hers. But she always voted. We talked about it some. One of the this is not politics, but I just remember that one of the pieces of advice that she gave me was, don't say that you know something if you're not sure about it. In other words, I know a lot of people who will say something like as if it's fact and true, and I know that it isn't sometimes. And people don't listen to you very. Now, I'm not going to say I'm perfect, that I've never done it, but I try to remember my mother's words, which is like, people don't listen to you if you keep saying things that are not accurate or not true, and it turns out when people find that out, they just tune you out and don't listen to what you're saying anymore.
Exactly.
I always remember her when I think of something, or when somebody else says something that's either an extreme exaggeration or just they don't have their facts right. Now, it's one thing to say an opinion. Right. We all have our opinions. Right. But as they say, we're all entitled to our opinions, but not our own set of facts. That's right. So.
It's a wise woman.
I always thought that was a very important piece of advice that I try to live by.
It's a good one. So you went to elementary school and high school in Vergennes.
Yes.
Anything stand out in those, your teachers, or you mentioned that one class that you really excelled in?
Mr. Aldinger's class in American Political Behavior, it was called, in the 9th grade, and Mr. Aldinger was a Democrat, and I was a young Republican, but he still gave me an A+ because, it was. I mean, again, it was great. I wish I'd got involved in more things. I was a member of the chess team. I used to like playing chess. I tried out for the track team for a little while, and I could run a little bit back in those days. I was a manager of the basketball team, did the stats and stuff. Mr. Aldinger also was the basketball coach. I wasn't good enough to be actually a player, but still, it had me involved in sports. But it was. There's two teachers, both Mrs. Gray, who there's a couple teachers I've always wanted to try to go back and find them and connect with them, just to sort of thank them because they did stuff to help me as a kid without a father when I was 9 years old. Right. And that's Mrs. Gray, Arlene Gray, who was my 3rd and 4th grade teacher. Wow. And I'm just guessing because she felt bad because she knew that I was. And Mr. Smith, my English teacher in the 7th grade. Mrs. Gray, if she was alive, would have to be she's probably not around. It was a long, long time ago. Mr. Smith might well be. I would love to track him down.
Interesting.
So yeah, they were great teachers who really tried to kind of help me and help me move forward in a good way, and taught me some good lessons.
That's great. That's great. So at some point you moved to Burlington
after high school. I worked at Basin Harbor a couple of different summers. We had a couple of great summers at Basin Harbor Club. So I go back. We were just down in Basin Harbor walking around and had dinner at what's called the Red Mill. Yes. And that's always a trip down memory lane for me, nostalgic. Because while they've added some things, it's still like, I feel like I'm in a time warp. Go, it's like it used to be, even though they've added some great things. But we had a couple of just great summers there. My wife and I both worked there at the time. Oh,
Did you meet her
Girls
there?
all no. She went to Vergennes Union High School. We sort of ran in the same group of friends.
Okay.
But the girls all lived in Esquire. It's called Esquire, and the boys lived in another building.
Oh my goodness! So you stayed right on campus, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
That's wonderful.
It was a couple of really great summers. But then, yes, we both moved to Burlington. My wife was going to Champlain. I was going to Champlain too. Here's another one of my regrets. My wife graduated from Champlain. I went to Champlain, but did not finish because I started thinking, I don't think I want to go into accounting. Mm-hmm. And I'd taken a year in it. And this is another piece of advice for people. Go back and finish because I always, for years and years, I meant to go back and finish. And for years, I just kept putting it off, and life got in the way, and I frankly just never got around to it. But I do regret that I didn't go back to Champlain. And it was just, I sort of had decided after a year, like with accounting being the major, that I don't think this is going to be my field.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Did you ever think about political science or anything like giving
that? Would have been more up my alley.
That would have been up your alley.
Political science,
yeah. Okay.
There are people that think I could probably teach a class in political science.
I think you could teach a class right now. You could teach a class. Absolutely.
I probably could.
Oh,
I probably could.
Yeah, and do a good job. I would think.
And I think it'd be interesting.
Yes.
But so if anybody wants to hire me,
think about it. Maybe go back to Champlain. Maybe they'll be the ones that'll. But I could see that, Kurt. Okay. Anyhow, you're in Burlington.
Yep. Yeah. We moved to Spruce Court, and I ended up, for a long time, I ended up running a small business, a manager of a store and deli, which was Carrie's on St. Paul Street.
Yep.
And one of the things that became was Peter Frayne wrote about this, the late great Peter Frayne from Inside Track and 7 Days.
Right.
And he wrote that he would, because he was from Chicago, I think, when he moved here.
That's right.
And he would come in Carrie's, and I would sometimes be waiting on people, but on the phone, talking on the Mark Johnson show.
Peter, you would be on.
I would be on the phone
with Mark Johnson.
The Mark Johnson show.
Oh
sometimes. So, and in terms of politics, I always followed politics really closely, especially national politics. Mm-hmm. Then a little later on, I started realizing how important local politics was as well, and I'd already followed national and state. And I got involved in 1993 in the mayor's race in Burlington, volunteering with Peter Brownell's campaign.
Oh, yes.
And Peter went on to become the first one-term mayor of Burlington from 1993 to 1995.
Right.
It was a huge upset at the time. I still got the Burlington Free Press front page, which I'm in the background, with Peter Brownell upsetting Peter Clavell.
Yeah.
And 2 years later, Peter Clavell came back and beat Peter Brownell. It was a three-way race between Clavell, Brownell, and Paul Lafayette.
Wow. And
in that same year, I ran, in 94, I ran for the legislature now, for the House first. I lost, but it sort of got things going because I remember someone coming up to me at the polls and saying, "Hey, Kurt, I'm glad you tried this. I hope you come back out and try again." And I said, "What do you?" They said, "Well, you can't win this race." It was Bill Aswad, and at the time, Carmel Babcock. I don't know if you remember, but she had been in the legislature for 20 years. She was on the Appropriations Committee.
Wow.
And I came within 5 votes of upsetting Carmel.
Oh, 5 votes.
We had a recount, and I lost a couple more votes.
But this is your legacy is close votes.
Yeah, and so
wow.
So
and you lived in the New North End from the beginning.
Oh yeah. I lived in the New North End. I started on Spruce Court in the South End.
Okay.
But then I've lived in the New North End since like '87.
Okay. Yep. Gotcha.
87 or 88, maybe 88.
Wow. Okay.
I love the New North End.
Yeah, me too. So, so you ran up in the New North End for the legislature, lost by 5 votes.
It ended up being a little bit more when I lost. I actually lost a few votes in the recount, but it started out. In fact, I remember the exact total. It was 1595 to 1590.
Wow.
I can remember being announced right here on Channel 17.
Wow. You have a good, your memory is very good about facts
I do have
like
a good
that.
memory for meaningless facts.
So you ran again 2 years later?
Well, that was in November of '94.
Right.
Peter Brownell, who was mayor, then called me up and said, "Hey, you ran a great race." He said, "I hope you will consider running for the city council now." He thought that Bill Aswad was not going to run. So I, after a while, I announced I was going to run, thinking that Bill wasn't going to run.
Right.
Bill ended up running, but I ended up winning.
Wow.
And that was 1995. So that was 30 years ago. It was when I first elected. And then I had different stints on the council over a period of, I think it ended up being 16 or 18 years on the city council. I ended up being city council president for 4 years, but not consecutively. There was 2 from 2007 to 2009, and then 2018 to 2020. And then the last time I won, there were no Republicans on the council. So people would say to me, how did you pull that coup off? You got elected council president and there's not even a Republican on the council.
Right. So how did you pull that off, Kurt?
That's a secret I can't tell you. No,
that speaks a lot about you.
Frankly, I remember I had to tell people, I said, look, I was council president before. I'd love to do it again. I think I can do a good job. But there was a Democrat that was running, but sort of was doing it sort of under the radar. And there was a progressive that might run. And the Democrats didn't really want there to be a progressive city council president. And the progressives kind of really didn't want there to be a Democrat city council president.
Right.
So for me, I just said, hey, look, I'm not going to sit around and wait for you to try to work this out. And you either want me to be council president or you don't. If it's not going to, and if this is going to go on behind the scenes for a long time, then I'll pull out.
Right.
And so they finally decided, you know what,
we'd like to
want to support you.
Wow. Now, the first time when you became board president, there were other Republicans. How many?
Let's see. At that time, you are pushing my memory now. That was 2007. I think there might have been 3 Republicans back then. Still, and back then the council was bigger. It was 14.
Okay.
It's 12 now.
Right.
So anyway, it was a great honor to serve as council president. Selected by my
peers,
colleagues on the city council. Both the time there were a couple of Republicans, Democrats, and progressives, and I think most people gave me high marks for trying really hard to be fair, make sure everybody got heard, and make sure the public got heard, but also doing it with a sense of humor. That was one of my calling cards, was try to do it with a sense of humor. I do think that's important. And frankly, that here and there got me in trouble. I remember a constituent, I think it was when I was on the Board of Finance, and I had made a funny remark, and this person watching sent me a message saying, how dare you, that's a serious topic. And I said, you know what? I'm serious most of the time when we have to be serious, and these are serious issues we're dealing with.
Right.
But we also have to have a sense of humor.
Exactly.
And
because things get tough, and
they do, and it helped with the public occasionally.
Yeah.
I remember there was a particularly tense issue, and the public we were filled with the public. The gallery was filled upstairs and downstairs. I can't remember what the topic was, but it was a very sensitive issue that people on both sides were really fired up about.
Right.
And it might have been trees in City Hall Park. Sometimes that's
oh yes.
But,
yep.
Someone got up and spoke and said, and this is not going to sound funny here, but at the setting where everybody was super serious, they all laughed, and it sort of
broke the ice.
Yeah, broke the ice. Yeah. A person got up and said, hey, look, I went to, they might have been Italy, but it was some country, they said, and when I went there, they had their City Hall Park, and they actually, went out and built a wall in City Hall Park, and when they got done speaking, they went back to their seat, and of course, I'm running the meeting, so I had the microphone. I said, but the question is, who paid for that wall? Because that was at the time that Donald Trump had just become president. The question, though, is
who paid for the wall?
Who paid for that wall?
Mexico.
And everybody laughed.
That's great. Yeah. So a little bit of humor. I get the sense, although I wasn't around for much of your time on the city council, though, that you kept some order to things too, that you didn't let things get out of hand, and you let the public really have a voice in the whole proceedings and whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to, again, and in the first term, we had what was called a zoning rewrite, which was, it had gone on through a couple of other city council presidents and a couple of mayors. The process was just a mess. And basically it was at the point where it's like, okay, we need to get this done. It's sort of, we need to be in the get her done phase.
Yeah.
And so I tried to create a process where we could do that and do it in a way where the zoning rewrite was able to foster business growth and then do it in a way that worked. It wasn't perfect, but we could not continue to be frozen in city government by this one particular issue where we almost couldn't do anything else, which is where we were. It's hard to think back to that because I faced so many big issues over the years, but back then that was a huge issue, the zoning rewrite. I remember at the time I said, that's going to be on my tombstone when I die.
Zoning rewrite.
The zoning rewrite. There are huge issues with Burlington Telecom.
Right.
We ended at the end of the day, and it turned out to be very controversial. Was the selling of Burlington Telecom?
Right.
Back then, there was a front page story on the Free Press. Back when they covered the council.
Yeah, they don't do it.
Sadly,
anymore.
It's not the same
I
anymore.
know.
But it was a front page on the Free Press every other day in the news. But just the council was at odds with each other. But I have to tell you, in the end, I think that we did the right thing. We had a company buy Burlington Telecom that kept it, Burlington Telecom.
Yep.
That kept it, even though Schurz is a company based out of Indiana. But we had talked extensively with Todd Schurz, and he wanted it to remain local, and though he was going to be based in Indiana, he had the money to make sure it was going to work. And that gave the people that ran it here local autonomy to run it the way. So I now feel great years later that I called up, because I have Burlington Telecom for internet, and I called up when I had an issue one day, and the guy that came on the phone, he said, "Is this Kurt Wright, the guy that was on the city council?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, I really shouldn't be doing this because I just need to help you with your issue." But he said, "But I just want to tell you, thank you for I know how hard that process was. Thank you for working this out where we got Schurz as an owner, because it's created a great job for me, and it's really the one mistake I believe was that the city council." Not me, and there was maybe 3 or 4 of us, but the majority of the council did not vote for us to stay invested in Burlington Telecom.
Oh,
we sold it. We had the opportunity to have a stake in it.
Really? Huh.
I think we were trying for 7.5%. There was discussion whether it would be 10 or 15%. Burlington Telecom has done very well expanding now, and are a very profitable company. And it would have been a steady stream of income that you don't get a chance to have all the time.
Exactly.
That we really could have used. And to me, it was just a bad move. Was there risk? There's risk in anything.
Yeah.
But we knew from talking to Todd Schurz and others that the trajectory was really looking on the upside.
Wow.
I just thought it was so disappointing that we took the hit when Burlington Telecom started out in the beginning and lost money.
Right.
Money was misused. We won't go into that whole subject.
Right.
But, and so taxpayers lost some money. And then when it was taking off,
we had a chance to,
And so we got the right owner, and it's worked out for the jobs with Burlington Telecom and as a service for Burlington residents and others outside Burlington as well now. So that part, in my mind, worked out great despite the rocky road.
Right.
But I think the council, the majority, made a mistake in not keeping us with an investment.
Interesting. That's good to know. I had no idea. Huh. When you think back over those years, what was your greatest achievement? What, if someone like me said, "What's your greatest achievement when you were on the city council?" What would you say?
Where have I run into you a couple of times?
Me? Where have you run?
The Burlington Bike Path.
Yes, right.
I look at that as one of my. Now I want to just be clear. I don't want to give myself credit, but but when I go on the Burlington Bike Path, I sometimes think about how I had at least a small role in making sure the bike path became a world-class bike path.
Yeah.
Because it had really fallen into disrepair. I would see people trying to use rollerblades on it, and there would be sections that were like, how do they do this? It's heaving up here in different places. So what happened was I put a resolution before the finance board. This is over 15 years ago. And I said, we need to dedicate money to the bike path to make sure that, we have to fix it.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to Champlain Spencer. He called me about the resolution, who's been the DPW director for a long time now, before he was the local motion director.
That's right.
And he said, Kurt, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I think that we need to look broader at this. We ought to create some kind of a task force. And I talked to him and I said, you know what? You're right. We created the Burlington Bike Path Task Force with the goal of paving the bike path, which was such a mess, the entire path, and widening it. And I'll give Mayor Weinberger and others more credit because we could come up with the idea and create a task force, but somebody's got to actually
have the political will to pay for it.
And use government to make it happen. We had to go to the taxpayers and ask for it. Taxpayers approved it, and today we do have a world-class bike path that has been repaved, widened, and there are all these pause places on the path where you can stop and go look at the beautiful Lake Champlain.
Exactly.
So that is one thing that while I give a lot of other people more credit, but I am proud to have had a hand in that.
That's great.
Also, the permit reform issue, again, I think Burlington still needs more reform to make the permit system more streamlined and easier to navigate, and because I still hear horror stories, but we did make some improvements where it became like you didn't have to go here, there, somewhere else.
Right.
You'd hear people I had to go here, and then I'd get this, and then they told me to go over here to this other department.
Right.
So we turned it into more of a one-stop shop. And I will say that Mayor Weinberger, who we ran against each other, and he won, but we developed a great relationship. I consider Moreau a friend to this day. I think he overall was a good mayor. I didn't agree with him on everything. Yep. And I'm sure that he'd acknowledge that he left office with some issues outstanding. Yep. But I do think overall that he did a good job, and I developed a great working relationship with him as former people who ran against each other. Right. And I was city council president while he was mayor for a couple of years, and we worked great together. So I developed lifelong friendships with people on the city council, like Jane Nuttall, who is was a progressive. She's a brilliant woman. She was council president before me the second time, and on her last night, when she left the council, I was council president. She had been before me. I said, Jane, I'm turning I want you to be in the city council president's chair to wrap this meeting up tonight. And Jane and Joan, Dave Hartnett, Sharon Busher, and others have become lifetime friends.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I get it. I think you just did that city council thing the way you would ideally want to do it. Am I right?
I'd like to think so.
Yeah,
I like to think so, and I got a lot of praise for it. There was a retirement party for me put together by some former colleagues, Patty Comline, who sat next to me in the legislature, who was a great and loyal friend, as well as Jane Nuttall and Dave Hartnett. Put together a retirement party for me. It was at the Elks Lodge. Yep. And 7 Days did a little story on it. Paula and Tim Ash were at the party, and she wrote about how unusual it was, because usually if you retire, it's your party that does it.
Right.
And this one was, some people thought there were more Democrats there and some progressives than there were Republicans. One of the Republicans came in and said, "Am I the token Republican?" There were other Republicans, but it was. I loved that, the fact that it was. I mean, Shap Smith was there, and we had a lot of Attorney General Charity Clark came toward the end. and speakers were Jane Nodell and Tim Ash and Sharon Busher. My boss Ken Barlow, who loves roasting me, but it was a fun night, and people said things that I didn't think I quite deserved, but it was I took it. It was
That's wonderful.
It was a great fun night.
Bravo to you. No,
Thanks.
And you doubled that by jumping into the legislature at the same time.
I did, just because I was a glutton for punishment. I ended up serving in both roles at the same time for a number of years.
Yeah.
And which I think was beneficial to have, as I learned, that it was not all, but a fair amount of state reps across the state also served on the local board. Mm-hmm. Now, Burlington is different than a little town because it's a hotbed of politics, and there's always big issues going on. Yep. And it takes probably more time than some do, although they all certainly are. Everybody's deserving of serving, the respect for serving on their local boards. But I think it is beneficial to have somebody who's serving in the legislature serving on the local board as well. But it was a lot of work because I never took any campaign for granted. So I say this, and I'm really pretty sure it's true, that I probably knocked on more doors in the New North End than anybody ever has, because I ran so many races.
Right.
And always was out knocking on doors. So sometimes there was a city council race in March, and then the legislative race that fall.
God.
And so I would be out just relentlessly canvassing and knocking on doors. And
there, I don't know if people appreciate running for the city council in Burlington, Vermont. It's usually from January to March when the election happens. The worst weather in the world.
Dead of winter. Dead of winter. I remember falling a couple of times, coming home with my pant leg ripped
on
the ice.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember knocking on doors in a snowstorm, and then I was like, okay, how far do I want to go with this? I'm probably getting a little sympathy vote here, because people would come out and say, wow, you're really dedicated. You're nuts, but you're dedicated.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough campaigning in the wintertime. I mean, electronics have helped, emails and blasts and stuff like that, but still, you knocked on a lot of doors.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and I had the honor of serving as a legislator, and I tried to remind myself every day that I went to Montpelier, when I would come around the corner and see the Golden Dome there, what an honor it was to be elected to serve my constituents in that beautiful historic building.
Absolutely.
And I had the honor of serving under Governor Howard Dean for his last term, Governor Douglas, and Governor Scott.
Wow.
Speakers of the House, I had Walt Freed, because when I first came in that year, 2000, the Republicans actually had the majority. It's hard to think back to that. But
really?
For that term, we had 83 Republicans in the House.
Oh, my goodness.
And we lost some members, but Walt stayed as Speaker. I think we were down to 75, but that was, still was. Then things went badly for Republicans for a long time since then, up until picking up some this past year. But I served under Walt Freed, and then Gay Symington, Shap Smith, and the Speaker of the House from the Islands.
Oh, yeah.
I can't think of her name right now. Before we end, I'll think of it.
Yeah. Wow.
So and I served on a number of different committees. Some legislators will get on a committee, and that's where they want to stay, and that's great, because they then learn the ins and outs of everything to do with transportation, for example.
Right.
I served on the Government Operations Committee, the local Housing Military Ways Committee, the Ways and Means Committee, the Education Committee, Natural Resources, which was a great experience too, because I got a taste of all of the different, and transportation, I got a taste of all the different committees and what they do, but also of the different styles of each one of my committee chairs.
Yeah.
And I will say that almost every one of the chairs probably would look back and where we had a rough moment between me and the chair. But at the end, I think we always respected each other. Francis Brooks, for example, was my chair in one committee, and we had a little rough patch, but he asked me to nominate him to be the director of Sergeant at Arms on the House floor afterwards.
Wow.
So I guess we did okay.
You did okay. Yes. How about your greatest achievement in the legislature? What would you say?
Well, The legislature, there were so many big issues over the years. I don't want to say this was the biggest achievement, but I was one of the deciding votes on same-sex marriage.
Really? Okay.
And that was an issue where I'd started out on one side of the equation and ended up supporting it after listening to everybody, which is what I said I would do. So that was certainly an historic vote. I think it was the right thing to do. But I was a champion of trying to keep taxes under control, trying to be a champion for taxpayers.
Yep.
I also was on education. I kept the focus on, we were having teacher strikes at the time, which were very disruptive in communities. And I proposed banning teacher strikes. Now, I tried to do it in a fair way. Like, there were some legislators who would just say, ban teacher strikes. I said, well, you're not going to do that. You got to be fair.
Right.
You got to take something away from both sides, which I proposed taking the ability to impose a contract away from the school board, and then the teacher's ability to go on strike. And it was similar to what some other states have, like New Hampshire. And we had someone from the NEA in New Hampshire testify in front of the Education Committee who said, and I actually had to turn to my person sitting next to me and say, wait, is this a person from the school boards in New Hampshire or the union? And it was from the union. And he said, hey, without the nuclear options, without everybody getting ready to employ the nuclear options, we actually get down to business, negotiate better, and we come to agreements.
Wow.
And I actually ended up getting that on the House floor. Nobody thought that would ever happen. And failed by one vote in the House of sending it on to the Senate.
Wow.
And it was a big, big story at the time. But I thought that it also, sometimes you don't win something, but you sort of change the discussion.
Right.
You change the paradigm and make people think about that, because it was just, it was just so disruptive in communities where there would be a strike. And that's what I stood up on the House floor. In fact, I used Derek Jeter as an example. Don't think people knew where I was going at first, but I said, Derek Jeter's just retired. And I said, and everybody in the end was tipping their cap to Derek Jeter in his last game and at the All-Star game of his respect for the game. And I said, what happens in teacher strikes, fairly or unfairly, is that for some parents and others, they are at odds with their teacher. The school board members against the local teacher, against the local parents, and it just was not a good dynamic. And it caused people, and again, I said, fairly or unfairly. It created this dynamic where some parents were not respecting the teachers. They didn't feel respect for their teachers because they were unhappy that they were out walking a picket line instead of being in school teaching their kids. So to me, I was like, we need a better system than this. And that we need a system that's fair to both sides. So while that never happened, I think it still made a difference. We aren't having teacher strikes like we were back in those days.
That's true.
Now I'd have to really hit my memory banks harder to come up with. There was so many issues over the years in the legislature, and so many votes that I cast. And I'm one of those people who am not afraid to say if you make a mistake. Like, somebody could pull up a vote and say, Kurt, how about this vote? And I'm sure I could look back and say, you know what, I blew that one. I could look back and find votes that I would regret. And I'll tell you, I think that's a lesson in politics for people, which is, if you make a mistake, I'll give you the example of on the city council 5 years ago in June of 2020, 9 councilors out of the 12 at the time voted to, in essence, defund the police. Without the necessary data to back it up.
It was emotions.
For me, it was like, you don't mess around with public safety without really knowing what you're doing. And the compromise was they were going to lay officers off, but instead they did it through attrition. There's 2 points here I would make, which is, one, and I said this at my retirement dinner, which is, I'm a believer in compromise and collaboration. However, I also want my elected officials to stand on principle when necessary and not compromise on something that's a bad idea. And on that one, they compromised it was during the time of George Floyd. I get that. There were protests at Battery Park daily. They were swamped with people at the public forum. But that's the time you have to stand up and say, okay, we get all that, but this is not the answer.
Right.
And we're still paying for that back then. And so
Yeah.
I would caution anybody, don't go with what's the big issue of the moment.
Right.
You've got to still
Right.
keep your eye on what's the right thing to do.
And separate emotions from head,
Exactly.
from your heart. Yeah.
And then the other part of that equation was later, if you're running for office, which we saw with some people, if you come out and say, if this is what you believe, I made a mistake in that vote.
Yeah.
It was a big mistake.
Yeah.
I saw examples of that where, without saying any names, where a candidate sort of tried to just dance around it. And I always thought you'd have been better off to just come out and say, I made a mistake. If I could go back in time, I would change my vote, and I would urge others to
Do the
and
same.
we,
Yeah.
because we're 5 years later, we're paying for that mistake.
We are.
That was a legacy type vote.
Yep. I ran into someone yesterday, and we were talking. I mentioned that you were going to be on the show today, and they talked about their having a lot of respect for you because you were at one point opposed to a particular issue, and then after discussion and people coming in and talking about it, you decided to vote another way. And it's what you said about the same-sex marriage, that you started having a thought about this is how I should vote, and then after listening to things, you changed your vote. That's an admirable quality of a politician, to be able to really listen and take in information and then make a vote that might be different from where you started.
Thanks, Gary. I appreciate that, and that's what I did in that issue, and what I tried to do on other issues, which is be open to finding out that you might have been wrong by listening to people, and that was one classic example of it. I thought at the time that it was actually, I didn't think it was beneficial to me politically.
Right.
Peter Clavell, back in 1993, probably lost to Peter Brownell based on a different but similar issue. And the New North End had, at the time, I don't think it's quite the same now, but it had a lot of conservative voters, Catholic voters who were opposed. And frankly, that year was 2009. I had just come off a race where I had almost become mayor. Right. That was the IRV race where I led Bob Kiss by about 4 or 5 percentage points in the first round, which was the normal traditional voting.
Right.
Still led him by about 4 or 5 points on the next round, which was the IRV voting. And so and then finally Bob passed me. I think it was considered the fourth round of voting by 2 or 2.5 percentage points. And so I had come that close to becoming mayor. Then probably a month later became the same-sex marriage vote on the House. So it was really quite a period of time for me in politics. And I remember sitting on the floor after casting the vote, but believing it was the right thing to do, and still do, but thinking, I'm just killed myself.
You're going to get hammered for that.
I'm going to probably not be able to get elected in the New North anymore. I actually turned out that I was stronger than ever politically because people respected. And I think it's somewhat similar to Governor Scott. Now, I may be giving myself too much of a pat on the back here because Governor Scott is a way bigger position than I've been. But just the little parallel is that I think people vote for Governor Scott even though they may not always agree with him on every issue, but they always believe that he's doing what he thinks is right.
Right.
They may not agree with him on every single issue. And I like to think that on a much smaller level that people also believe that I did what I thought was right.
Exactly.
I didn't just do the party line. I did what I thought was right. And doing the party line would have meant I wouldn't have get elected for very long in Burlington and the New North End anyway.
It may have led to you being board president for the number of times you were. I mean, I think your peers probably saw that too.
And you think back to it, I am now, probably the answer to different trivia questions, but I was the last Republican City Council president, and when I did get elected, there hadn't been one for 20 years.
Yeah.
I'm the last Republican counselor at all. There aren't any Republicans on the council now since I left several years ago. And the last Republican member of the House delegation from Burlington, which there was 11 members. I think it might be 10 now. So I'm sort of like the last one standing. Turn out the lights afterwards. Turn out the lights. The party's over.
God. Wow.
So
Interesting.
it's been an interesting time, and then of course for almost 6.5 years I then it was sort of a continuation of politics because I got to interview, and I loved interviewing different guests and I tried to do that the right way, as in I sort of made myself a student of media because I've always been a listener of radio, talk radio, and listened to all the Sunday morning shows from This Week with Brinkley back in the day to Meet the Press with Tim Russert and on and on. And I tried to think of what they didn't do right and did do right, and not that I was perfect with this either, but tried to navigate that in the right way when I did interviews, which was, one, be respectful, and make sure that the listeners and callers particularly, are respectful. That's the one thing I insisted was, you can ask a question that's a tough question, a passionate question, or a question that even makes the guest a little bit uncomfortable, but it has to be respectful. There can't be any name calling or any of that. And so I felt good when the show ended that we had done a show that I felt proud of.
Yes. You're talking about WVMT.
WVMT.
And it was the
Morning Drive.
Morning Drive, right. Yep. That's you did quite an amazing job on that show.
I felt proud about that. I loved doing the show.
Kind of brought together all the different aspects of your political life.
Yeah, I miss, and I'll say that having been gone from it for a little over 2 months, I miss doing the show. I don't miss getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Absolutely.
That's the part that I had a little heart scare back in February. They had some symptoms after shoveling snow, and they ended up catheterizing my heart and finding that I had some blocked arteries. One was as they told me, which sends a shiver up your spine later when you find out, one was what's called the widowmaker artery.
Yeah.
And that was 90% blocked.
Wow.
So they put stents in, and it sort of was an exclamation point on me deciding to leave. I just wasn't getting a good night's sleep. I loved doing the show, and the adrenaline would kick in when I did the show, and you wouldn't know that I was. But later, I would be like, ugh,
wiped out.
I was wiped out. There's a little bump. But I still miss it. We did interviews with even big names. We had Governor Chris Christie on the show semi-regularly. Some other national guests, some from Fox News, and we had people.
Governor Douglas is a regular.
Governor Douglas was a pretty regular guest on the show.
Scott as well.
Scott regularly. We had columnists like Rich Lowry on.
Wow.
And so we had all the big people in the state and locally, and national guests too. So it was a thrill for me.
Wonderful.
And we had also people we had the kids from Rice would come on and talk about the play they were getting ready to go to. And then I went to the play last year that they put on, which was The Sound of Music. And we had them come back in after, and I asked them, did you guys know that you nailed it? Because I went and I was amazed at the job they did. It was just so great. And when they came back in, I asked them, I said, now, when you're doing it, do you kind of know in the middle of the play that you nailed it? Do you think to yourself, we nailed it? And the kid that was playing the lead role said, I kind of did. I felt like we nailed it. And so that was also a lot of fun, getting to do the community stuff too.
Absolutely. Now, so getting up at 4 o'clock that's just unbelievable. But I'm thinking of WDEV has shows all through the day. Have you ever thought of a later morning, early afternoon show where you didn't kill yourself?
I would, anything that I did would be, I'm loyal to WVMT and the boss there, Ken Barlow.
Yep.
So anything I was doing would be through WVMT.
Gotcha.
There are people who want me to do a podcast. There are a number of people who said, hey, you got to do a podcast. You can do that any time of the day. We'll produce it for you. And so that's something I'm considering.
Okay.
But, and I'll just say that in this really tough time, I just think it's so important that we talk about politics in the right way. On the show, again, I would caution people. I didn't want to just have a show where the caller called up and said, I wanted them to feel free to say things, but within the bounds of reason.
Right.
For example, I'll give you an example. Somebody called one day and said, on the conservative side, we can't win at the polls anymore. They didn't think that the election was rigged. We can't win at the polls. So we're going to have to win in other ways. We're going to have to go out. And to me, it's like, no, we're not this show. We're not going to be talking about.
Right.
And in light of what we just saw happen
Yeah.
in Utah
Right.
with Charlie Kirk, and you could totally disagree with his views. I didn't agree with all of them. Some I did, some I didn't.
Yeah.
But he was engaging students across the country
Right.
and taking on issues that they agreed or disagreed with him, but he let the other side come up and have their full say.
Yeah.
But he got
Yeah.
shot and murdered 2 days ago for it.
Yeah.
And that is a real tragedy of our times, that we cannot engage in political violence.
Agreed.
And we can't be talking about people like they're the enemy.
Right.
Or that we're at war with the left or at war with the right.
Right.
Because if people start thinking that,
Yeah.
that this person's my enemy combatant,
Right.
and we're at war with them, then
Yeah.
that's where you end up.
Somebody who's not all put together, right, is going to do what just happened. Yeah.
So I think that is so
Yeah.
important that
Well said. Okay. So we're getting close to the end of the interview. You talked about a podcast. Do you have any other thoughts about what the future looks like for you?
Well, I'm not getting any younger. So right now I'm rehabbing my dog. My beloved dog Casey got run over by a car right in front of my house a few weeks ago. I thought she was dead for sure, so I've been working with her a lot. And I'm just taking some downtime. Although more and more people are asking me to come on some different podcasting shows like this one. And so I've been doing that. But I am considering a podcast. I'm going to be, I can't believe it, but I'm going to be 70 years old in February. So I'm not getting any younger, as I said.
Right.
But anybody has any ideas, let me know.
Yep.
As long as it's not an idea that has me getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
Other than that, I'm open.
And have you got the dishwasher yet?
You really did listen, didn't you?
I do listen.
You know what? We still haven't.
Okay.
And the bill at Bev's, it's not cheap. It was $4,000
What?
to take Casey in there, and now
yes.
to fix Casey,
Yes,
and there's going to be
absolutely.
continuing bills. So the dishwasher's
I understand.
still on hold.
The hands are still working.
I'm still doing a lot of dishes, not all of them.
Okay, great. Anything you want to, as we close up the interview, you want to say a piece of wisdom to the listeners, or?
Well, I think that, again, I'll use the time to say, in terms of health, don't ignore symptoms. Get your colonoscopies. I lost a brother and sister because they didn't do that. Mm-hmm. If I had ignored the symptoms with my heart, it might have been a different story for me. Right. So don't ignore symptoms. If you're in politics or thinking about going into politics, if you're a young person, be open to new ideas, be open to learning something, be open to thinking that maybe you're wrong about something, and be yourself.
Yeah.
Follow your principles. On the radio show and in politics, different times I was told, you've got to do it this way, you've got to be this. And on the radio station, I was told by some people, in order to appeal to this audience, you've got to do. And I said, I'm going to be who I am. Yeah. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But I'm not going to try to be something that I'm not. So that'd be my advice to people.
Great advice.
People love authenticity, I think, in general.
Yeah.
And certainly in politics. I tried to be authentic, good or bad. I tried to be authentic. And again, not to compare myself to people much bigger than me, but I may not agree with everything Bernie Sanders says, for example. But man, oh man, Bernie, the thing about Bernie is he is genuine, he's authentic, and that's what people look for.
Yeah, great, well said. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Great having you here.
Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it. It was fun.
Kurt.